Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Fikret. This video continues video series dedicated to learning Microsoft Fabric. Microsoft Fabric is a unified platform which includes many different services. In the past, we talked about services like Data Factory, real-time analytics, data activator, data engineering services. Today we are starting discussion around another great service in Microsoft Fabric, which is Synapse Data Warehousing. Join me to learn more. So here is a quick preview of what we are going to discuss today. We'll start with the overview discussion, where we'll first try to understand what is Synapse Data Warehouse, what are the capabilities, what are the tools available within Data Warehouse, and what is the target audience for this service. Next, we're going to talk about important part of Warehouse called mirroring, which allows you to bring external data sources into Warehouse without writing code or building pipelines. And then we'll discuss difference between data warehouse experience and experience of Lakehouse and SQL endpoint. Next, we'll move on to data ingestion method discussions. On a high level, you can bring the data using visual tools or code-less experience tools, as well as code-first experience tools, which includes number of commands. Then we'll briefly touch transformation orchestration options. Next, we're going to talk about how you can use the data created inside Warehouse. So in other words, how you can consume the data. Next, we're going to move to data ingestion architecture options. I'll provide two sample architectures. One is to address relatively simple scenarios, and then we'll also discuss more advanced scenarios. In a demo section, we'll start by creating a sampled warehouse, which is by far easiest way to start learning Warehouse. Then we'll explore data querying options. So we'll first connect SQL Server Management Studio tool, also called SSMS, to Warehouse. We'll also explore T-SQL querying. Next, we're going to create a view. Then we'll explore visual query. In the next part of the demo, we're going to create data warehouse, schema, and table objects. Then we will explore a few data ingestion methods, like Dataflow Gen2 pipeline, as well as we'll explore a few command options. Finally, we'll create and use shortcuts from within Warehouse. A quick reminder for the folks who are new to the channel, please take a moment and subscribe. That will allow you to stay up to date with my latest videos. So what is Synapse Data Warehouse? So Synapse Data Warehouse is a centralized service for enterprise warehouse, as the name suggests. It has inherited lots of great features from its predecessor, Synapse Analytics service, which is a separate Azure service. And the primary language for Warehouse is T-SQL, which makes it very attractive option for folk who know the SQL. So you can use T-SQL for creating and removing objects, data manipulation queries, data reading queries, to grant or manage security, and so on and so forth. So if you remember from past conversations, the target audience for data engineering service in Microsoft Fabric are data engineers and developers who are familiar with different programming languages. Unlike that, with data warehousing, most of the operations are done on T-SQL. That's why target audience is SQL analysts. So Delta Lake technology is also serves as a fundament for Lakehouse, which we discussed earlier. And great news is that you can have one lake hub with Lakehouse and your data warehouse, which can easily refer to each other using shortcuts. So let's talk about mirroring feature. A mirroring feature allows you to bring external data like Azure SQL database, Cosmos DB, and Snowflake. Great news is that it only requires few configuration steps, and you don't need to create any ETL code or pipelines. So once replication established, it will always bring you up-to-date data to data warehouse. So what are the differences of data warehouse experience from Lakehouse or SQL endpoint, which is based on Lakehouse? So from previous conversations, you may remember that whenever you create Lakehouse tables, there is a SQL endpoint created for each table. SQL endpoint experience is very similar to data warehouse, except SQL endpoints allows you to only read data. So you cannot write or create table using SQL endpoints. Whereas with data warehouse, you have full set of capabilities that are available within T-SQL. There are a number of differences between warehouse and the Lakehouse services. And one of the main differences is the language. So with data warehouse, you can only use T-SQL, whereas with Lakehouse, you can use Python, Scala, Spark SQL. And Spark SQL is similar to T-SQL, of course, but there are some differences as well. Another difference is a three-part table naming. So with Lakehouse, you can have only two-part names. So basically, you can have your Lakehouse name, and under that, you can have your tables. Whereas with data warehouse, you can also include schemas. So your object names will include warehouse name, schema name, and the table names or object names. With data warehouse, you can also create some extra object types like functions and stored procedures. And finally, with data warehouse, you can create modeling relationships, primary keys, foreign keys, and so on and so forth. So let's talk about data ingestion methods for warehouse. The few codeless ingestion tools that were available for Lakehouse are available for data warehouse as well. So these are data pipelines and the Dataflow Gen2, which have a nice graphical interface, and you can basically create quite sophisticated pipelines without writing single line of code. There are a few code-first tools within Warehouse. So one of them is copy inter command, which allows you to read from Parquet and CSV files located in data lake storage. This is a very performant tool. So if you have a large amount of flat files sitting in your data lake, then this is recommended way of ingesting. Another ingestion method is to use create table as syntax, or CTAS in short. So this allows you to create table from your queries. That means the source should be somewhere within one lake hub. Next, you can use insert inter select command, which also allows you to write into destination table based on source queries. Like CTAS command, this also requires that your data is located somewhere in one lake hub. Finally, you can also use clone commands. That's mostly to create copies or duplicates of your tables within Warehouse. The next easier way of making data available within Warehouse are shortcuts. With shortcuts, you simply create pointer to external objects. That allows you to refer to the data without even bringing it into Warehouse. In terms of transformation options, you have multiple options. One of the easiest and obvious choices are using stored procedures, and then you can either call the stored procedures from data pipelines, or you can write direct queries against data warehouse that will be part of certain activities within data pipelines. So once data in warehouse, it can be consumed using Power BI reports and dashboards. Let's discuss some sample data ingestion architecture for data warehouse. So the architecture you see on the screen represents a relatively simple architecture with direct data ingestion. So in this scenario, you can have your data in data lake storage. So you can use, for example, your Fabric data pipeline to bring the data there. Then from there, you can directly consume that data using command tools like copy inter. Of course, the limitation of this option is that the data has to be in one of the allowed formats like Parquet or CSV. You can also ingest the data directly from Azure SQL database or Cosmos DB or Snowflakes using mirroring feature, as I mentioned earlier. And here we have another more advanced scenario. So this scenario follows medallion architecture that we discussed when we considered a lakehouse architecture. So at the center of this are 3 medallion data zones like bronze, silver, and gold. And then you can have landing zone in addition to these 3 zones, which will collect your source file in the original shape. And then all this data can be consumed into lakehouse tables using Spark engine. And once it's ingested and transformed within lakehouse, this data can be consumed into warehouse. This architecture also allows you to address real-time ingestion scenarios. So I provided here a sample ingestion pipeline where data comes through Event Hub and event streams, and then from there it can be either deposited into Lakehouse or into KQL database, which also can be referred from a warehouse or lakehouses. All right, enough of theoretical discussion. So let's jump into the demo section. All right, I am in Microsoft Fabric and I have selected Data Warehouse Service. As a first exercise, I'm going to create a sample warehouse. I'm going to use this button from home page. Under the new section, I will assign a name and confirm. So it takes a few minutes, and once it's created, Fabric will create a sample database with schemas, table, data, everything you need to get started. So let me walk you through this screen. On the left-hand side, we have Object Explorer under database name, where you can see schemas. So if I can just collapse this, you will see different schemas. You can also see system folder, so that's information schemas, which will contain some system views, which is great when you want to get metadata from your database. And you have security folder, which will show you your existing security principles, users, roles, and so on and so forth. And under queries, it will show you the queries you created within the database. At the top, you will see the command bar with few useful commands. And on the central part of the screen, we have a sample data. So this will change as you select different tables. So for example, if I select this table, I see a different data. And here at the left bottom corner, you will see 3 tabs. So by default, you have data tab selected, but you can switch to query tab and the model. Model tab allows you to create a relationship between tables. So let's start with very simple query. I'm going to use new SQL query button here and then write very simple query. So I'll type select. As you can see, IntelliSense suggests you different commands. So I'll say select star from, and you can put the table name. And then I'll hit the run button. As a next exercise, I'm going to create a view. So there are multiple ways of creating views as well. You can either expand new SQL query tab and select view, which will provide a boilerplate template for your view command. Or if you know the command, you can easily add it here. In this case, let's say I'm looking to create a view on geography table. So I will say create view. And add as. So let me expand this. And I'll run this. So that will create my view object under the views folder. The alternative way of querying the tables is visual query. So that's convenient if you are not quite familiar with the SQL syntax. I'm going to use new visual query button, which opens a design page. And from here, I'm going to select one of these tables, let's say weather table. I can drag and drop it here. So as you can see, this produces Dataflow Gen2 interface. And here you can apply many different column and table type of transformations. So once you have applied your transformations, you can save it as a view or select View SQL button to see your queries, like this. Querying your data from Fabric portal is convenient and the easy way of doing. However, some folks may prefer to connect and use a traditional SQL clients like SQL Management Studio. So let me quickly show a connection here. So for that, you'll need to get connection string from settings button, and you can copy it from the bottom of the screen like this. Then I'm gonna navigate to SQL Management Studio, click Connect Object Explorer, paste this connection string, select Microsoft Entra MFA option, provide your username, and connect. Once you are connected to Fabric workspace, you will see all the Lakehouse and the Data Warehouse databases created under that. So, and from there, you can expand any database and run your queries against this. So for example, this is one of the sample data warehouses I created earlier. If I click here, I can see the tables, and I can use new query button to create new queries. To recap, the sample data warehouse is a great tool to start your learning and explore the data. Now let's create a new data warehouse. So to do that, I'm going to navigate back to my Fabric and go to the home page. And from here, I'll select warehouse button. I'll call this as my first warehouse and hit create button. Once warehouse is created, we can create a schema and a table object. So I'm going to use new SQL query button that will help me to create a template. So I'm going to use schema button from here. I will name my schema. So let's say my schema and hit run, and that creates schema. So I'm going to follow the same method to create a table. So in this case, I'll say my table, and I'll put few sample columns here. As you can see, data types are different from Lakehouse data types. So these data types are more in line with what you may have seen in other SQL flavors. So let's say Azure SQL database or Synapse Analytics dedicated server. So I'm going to say my second column is going to be column 2 and comma, and run my query. So that creates the table. Because I did not specify the schema, it will go under the DBO schema, but you can specifically say what schema you want your table to be under. All right, now let's explore a few warehouse ingestion methods. As a first exercise, I'm gonna ingest CSV file using Dataflow Gen2. Let's take a look at the data sample. So this data represents a sales data, and it has certain irregularities that will need to be cleaned. So to start with, actual data start at line 6, and then I can see that line 5 has column headers, which we could possibly use. And then within date column, I can see there's certain strings that are not compatible with date type. So let me go back to warehouse and navigate to get data command and select new Dataflow Gen2. With Dataflow Gen2, you can bring your data from lots of different sources, including data lake, database, and so on and so forth. So if you want, you can upload this file to your data lake, but I am going to use a simple method. So I'm going to select get data and select text CSV, which allows me to upload file locally. Next, I'm going to select upload file option and select browse button, and then I'll select this file. So you will find this file in the description of this video. Okay, so next I'm going to confirm my selection. Then I'll hit create button to create the data source for my data flow. So with data flow, you have many different type of transformations. Some of them are column transformations, whereas some of them are working on table level. I'm going to navigate to remove rows command group, and from here we'll select remove top rows, and it will tell to skip 4 rows. So if I hit OK, as the next transformation, I'm going to tell Dataflow to use first row as column headers. So I'll navigate to transform command group and select use first row as a header. Now my data looks much better. Next, I'm going to apply filter to remove NA rows. From date column, select all rows except NA and confirm. Finally, I'll select my destination. So as you can see, warehouse option is already pre-selected, but I'll need to select my table name. So I will hit settings button, then we'll confirm warehouse connection. And from here, I'll need to select my warehouse, and then I'll need to specify table names. Notice that we have 2 options here, new table or existing table. I'm going to use new table and specify table name. Then I'll confirm my selection and click publish button. Dataflow pipeline publish process takes few minutes, and once it's published, it will start bringing data to warehouse. So my data flow has completed. Now I can see the new table. As a next demo, I'm going to explore a few command-based ingestion methods. Tab, and here I created a script, which I'll be sharing in the description of this video. Let me walk you through the script. So my first command creates a January sales table using traditional DDL command. I already ran it and created January sales table. And my second command uses copy into command to bring the data from blob storage. So you'll need to upload this CSV file into your blob storage and copy its URL. And then you'll also need to generate shared access signature. So let me briefly show this. So I'm going to navigate to my blob storage. And here I'm going to select data folder. This is a folder where I have uploaded my file. And you can select this 3 dots command and use copy URL and paste it into your script. Another configuration setting is SAS token, and you can generate it from here as well. So click here, select your start and expiration date, and select your permissions. So in this case, we are only intending to read the data, so read permissions is enough. And then click generate SAS token and copy your SAS token. So let me go back and walk you through the rest of the command. So I have also provided a list of columns here, so you may or may not specify that, so this is optional. And then I have specified encoding for this CSV file. Then I say my first row start at line 5. Let me run this command. This command has failed. If I take a look at the error message, it shows me byte offset and column 1, and it suggests that irregularity is in date column. And that's because of this irregularity I have mentioned earlier. So the copy into command is very flexible. By default, if you don't specify any error-related options, the ingestion will stop at the first error. However, you can change this. So one way to handle this is to specify a number of errors that your ingestion can tolerate. So if I enable max error option, so in this case, if I put it to number 3, then my command should succeed. In addition to that, you can also specify a location for reject file. So that will ensure that whatever files that have not been ingested are logged into some storage location. So to do that, you will need to enable these 2 options. And then for error file, you have to specify path and credentials. So SAS token for error file will be generated similar way to I already showed, except in this case you are going to write into that location. So make sure that you are specifying write permission when generating SAS token. So if I run this command with rest of the options enabled, that succeeds, and it should generate rejection file. So let me navigate to my storage and take a look at the paths that I have specified. So that's error container, and the Fabric will create rejected rows folder underneath, and underneath you will find date related folder, and within that you will find multiple subfolders. Each of these files contain certain diagnostic data about rejected rows. What I find most helpful is another folder. So let me just navigate there. So the second folder has a CSV file with rejected rows only. So I already downloaded this file. Let me show the sample of this data. So as you can see, it contains a list of columns as well as rows that have failed ingestion. Another useful file in this folder is JSON file, error JSON file, and that file looks like this. And it will also contain detailed error message alongside with row offsets and column values. One thing to notice that I had to create my tables beforehand so that I could use copy into command. That's because in this case, my source is CSV file. For certain data files like Parquet files, you may skip the first step and then use copy command alongside with auto create table option. So to summarize, copy into command is a great tool for data ingestion. If your sources are flat files like CSV, Parquet, and you will find a great documentation describing all the options for that. So it's here. I'll include in the description of this video as well. My next command demonstrates how to use create table as syntax, in other words, CTAS syntax. So as you can see, syntax is very simple. You specify your target table, and then you can specify your query. And this query can be any allowed T-SQL query. So in this case, I am adding sales year column using calculated expressions. And my next command shows how to use insert into command. So it's very simple. So if you have ever used insert into command in T-SQL, this one is no different. Notice that for insert into command, your destination table should be pre-existing. Okay, as a last demo, I'm gonna show how you can use shortcuts to refer to any tables sitting within your OneLake hub. To add a shortcut, I'm gonna use warehouse button, and from here I can select any lake houses as well as warehouses I have in this workspace. So I'm gonna select bronze lakehouse, confirm my choice, and that adds bronze database here. Now I can expand this and view all the tables within this lakehouse. Then I can select any table from my lakehouse and refer to them as if they are part of my warehouse locally. So I have included one example here. So that concludes today's discussion. To summarize, we have learned creating warehouse. Then we have created number of database objects within that warehouse. Finally, we have explored few data ingestion methods. Some of them were GUI-based codeless tools, whereas some of them required some coding. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in future videos.